So today we are going to take a look at setting up a portable raft. Now this is a pretty easy thing to do. I'm going to remove this map that I was using for. This is still the project where we have our common event that tracks our player location. It has our transition. As you can see, we're not using any plugins. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is create a common event that's going to call for the portable raft. So remember, we are always tracking the player. So what we want to do is say, when we use that raft, check the location, in this case, in front of the player. So for this, we are going to use, I believe, we're going to do terrain tags. I believe it is this. I think these are the shallow seas. No, that's deep sea. I think that is shallow sea. We'll play around with it a little bit until we get it right. But you can see all we're doing is setting our terrain tags to places that we want to be able to put the raft. In this case, terrain tag 1. We're going to add a thing to the player, and we can actually add it down here. And for this, we are going to get location info, and we're going to give it a name. It's going to be, we're going to call it raft terrain tag, so that we know that we're setting this variable that we're getting to be a terrain tag that we're using for the raft. We're going to get the info of the terrain tag, and we are going to get it on the player's X and the player's Y. Now, as you can see, this is going to pull from these locations here, but we actually want to get the space in front of the player. So I need to do it a little bit different, because we don't want to be the spot the player's on, because the player shouldn't be able to walk into the river or shallow sea. So for this, what we can do, we're going to create a new event. It's going to be a conditional branch. And this condition is going to be dependent on which way the player is facing, because depending on which way they're facing is going to determine where we're getting a terrain tag from. We're also going to need to create an extra variable, which I believe we already have. We can use our x2 and y2 because they are only used in instance situations where we're saving that information for a transport and then we don't need it anymore. I'm trying to think if there's going to be any repercussions to this, because you want to think about anytime your variables are used again, that you're not going to overwrite them somewhere. And I think we're fine. So we're saying, I believe if the player is facing up, or no, down. If the player is facing down, and I know I'm doing this a little bit backwards, but I'm doing it off the top of my head. So before we add that +1 or -1, we're going to have to set these equal to the player's current X or Y. In this case, we want their Y2 to be equal to their Y1. I'll kind of keep these in order a little bit. And we want their X2 equal to their X1. So when we call on the raft, it says set their x2 equal to their x1, set their y2 equal to their y1. And then if the player is facing down, remember it counts from 0 up. So we're going to get y2 is +1. And that's going to give us the terrain tag of the space in front of the player when they're facing down. And we're going to set this to these. We're just going to need to do this a few more times. If they're facing left, then the x we're getting is to the left of them, so we're going to have to take their x2 and subtract 1. If they're facing right, their x2 +1. And if they're facing up, their y2 -1. Then it grabs that terrain tag. So then we need to say, if that terrain tag is not equal to 1, a valid terrain for placing the raft, then we're going to say you cannot place the raft here. So we want to make sure it does not continue. We're just going to exit event processing. Now you could do an else here, but sometimes I like to just have it continue on and have it exit the event processing. So we could say else here and remove this event processing cancellation bit. But I just have, like, I will use these else statements. Sometimes will, sometimes I won't. It kind of depends. And it's pretty arbitrary with me about how I use them. You just have to make sure that if you've got something after your conditional branch, that if what's in your conditional branch could continue to the next step and you don't want it to, you need to throw one of these in here. Otherwise, use an else branch on there. So then if it is equal to 1, then this won't do anything and it'll continue to the next step. And what we will do here is, I believe it's a set vehicle location. Exactly. Boat is our raft. And we're going to designate it to the player map ID. That's always been kept track of. And the player X2 and the player Y2. Remember, this thing always calls for the map ID first. I always have a habit of wanting to put the X, Y, and then the map ID. And of course, when I do that, that throws everything off and sends me to a weird map. So that's pretty simple. We find the player, we're always keeping track of the player's location and map ID. When this common event is run, it sets a second variable to the player's location. And then depending on which way the player is facing, it gets the space in front of the player, finds the terrain tag of that space after the adjustment, checks to see if it's equal to a valid terrain tag from our tile set where we want it to occur. If it's not, it's going to tell the player you can't place the raft here and exit the event processing. If it is valid, then it's going to move on to the next step, which moves the vehicle location of the boat to that location in front of the player. Now we need an item to use. We have our homework here. We can clear these out. We're not going to do anything with them right now. So we're going to create a raft. Now for this, we're not going to have an icon for it. So what we will do is use a program because I didn't see any icons in the default icon set that really scream, hey, this is a raft. So while we're at it, of course you can use any program you want. but I'm going to show you real quick how to use GIMP. GIMP is a free image manipulation program that you can get online. You can just type in, just go online, type in GIMP, download, and you can go to your download page, download it. And if you don't have Adobe or something like that, then this is a great program. So what we're going to do is we're going to want to open a file. And in this case, we are going to go to our documents. And in my case, it's under games. And we're using the project we're working with, so we go into tutorials. So you'll have to know the file path of your project. And it's not icons because it's a vehicle. So it's going to be under images. And vehicles are under, either they have their own folder or they're under characters. They're under characters. So we're going to find the one labeled vehicle. And here's our rafts. Now with GIMP, I set it snap to grid so I can kind of be a little bit less accurate about where I grab, and it'll just automatically line things up to the grid. Now I've got mine set up so that my grid is automatically showing and automatically set to 48 by 48 spaces. But remember, icons are 32 by 32. So if we want to just create an icon, we need a 32 by 32. In this case, I'm not going to want this black background, so I'm just going to delete this layer. There's other ways to create a layer, but I'm going to add a new layer, and I'll just let it be called background to it. Doesn't matter what it's called, but it needs to be filled with transparency. And we grab whatever raft image we need. I'm just going to grab this one right here. Now I'm going to bring it over here and Control V to paste it. Now you see it's a little bit too large for the image. What I'm going to do is go to Tools, no, Layer. Layer is going to affect whatever layer you're working with. And as you can see over here, I'm working with the floating layer. A floating layer means it's not bound to a background layer or anything yet. But we are going to bind it to the layer once we're done here. So we're going to scale this entire floating layer. We want to always select none for the interpolation to get it as clean as we can. In this case, I'm fine with doing it by pixels, but you can do it by percentage. And this links or unlinks these two. So as soon as I hit tab, it corrects this one to 32 because they're linked, and I scale it. And now our icon's down here in this. So since I haven't already set to rectangular select, I can just click somewhere on the image and it'll automatically bind it. Now, if I don't want these little water things here, I can just grab them, and I'm just going to use the delete key to erase them. And there's other methods people might have for deleting unwanted pixels in their picture, but this is simple enough. So the next thing you'll want to do is open up your icon sheet, because you're going to have to add this to it. So for that, you'll need to go back into your file path folder, go to System, and go to Icon Set. So we're going to open this one up. Now you see the grid is off from here. So we're going to go to Image, Configure Grid. Icons are 32 by 32. Since they're linked, as soon as I hit tab, it automatically corrects. And now it's scaled in. This one is 32 by 32, but we don't see the grid because the grid's sitting off over here somewhere because it's still set to be 48 by 48. But since we've just got a little 32 by 32 thing here, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to Control C to copy, bring it over here, and I'm just going to stick it up in the top right here. Oh, we go to View, Snap to Grid, so I can be a little more careless about where I click. We're just going to highlight that area, Control V to paste, and then click somewhere on it, and there's our raft. Now all we need to do is Control Shift E for export or export as. I like to use the shortcuts, so Control Shift E is export. I'm sending it to the icon set within the system folder, which is this image right here. So I'm going to overwrite it, replace it, and export. Now, I can go back to my game. I'm going to have to close my database to have it load, or reload the icon set rather. Double click my icon, and there's my raft. So now we have our raft icon in here. I'm going to leave it at, I'm going to make it actually a key item. I'm going to give it no scope and only allow it to be used from the menu screen and make it not consumable. You can set that up however you want. You can be creative with how the player has to use it, but then we're going to go to other, common event, and portable raft. Click OK, click OK. And then we have to give the player that portable raft. So let's just review our transition map real quick. We'll just say that there's maybe a closet here. Uh-oh, that's all icon. And we'll put a little event in our house. And that event is going to say, give the player the raft. And then because we probably don't want the player to have more than one raft, we'll do a switch. Call this event give raft. Create a new page for when the switch is on. And we'll do a little bit extra here. We can actually put stuff after the switch. It's going to still run the whole event before it finishes. So we're going to say you received. And then we're going to color code this. We'll make it, I believe 18 is green. Raft. I want an exclamation point so it sounds exciting, but I don't want it to be the same color as raft. So I'm going to switch back to color 0. And we can preview what this will look like. And you can see I made a syntax error here. And we made it red. So that means that 3 is green. An easy one to remember for me is 14, because 14 is the atomic value of gold. So if you ever want something gold, 14. Okay, and we should be all set up. Let's see if this works the way I intend it to work. Remember, playtesting is always one of the most important things you can do. All right, so remember we need to go to our house. So we're going to, let me turn this down a little bit. We're going to warp to our home. We're going to go over here and get our raft. Uh-oh. See, I made a mistake. And I know what I did is I didn't set this to be equal with the characters. So it's trying to wait for the character to get on top of it. So when we're making small minor adjustments to event, we can Control S or click the save icon and it'll save it. And we just have to reload the map. That little trick won't always work, but now we can see we don't want to be able to use the map, the raft, in the home. So it says we cannot place it here because it's checking the terrain ID. So now something happened, and that something is going to be in here. And what happened was, remember how I mentioned that using these things in other places can mess with your game? Well, this is searching for player map ID 2, player X2, and player Y2, but because I used the map or the raft to set up the X2 and Y2, it's setting those in relation to that home area. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be the error. So let's change these. We'll call this raft check X. We'll have Raft check why. This one should be Raft check X. Okay, so we've given it its own variable now. Now I'm not sure because we edited a common event. We might have to restart the game, but we'll find out real quick. In fact, it's going to still set our X2 and our Y2 on this map, so we will just restart the game. At least through this way. So we should appear out next to the bottom left of this castle when we return. We'll go get our raft. Try to use it here. Can't use it there, and let's hope that I don't have an issue. So I do have an issue. So let's see, what issue did I create here? The one thing is we set this to plus equals here, but this shouldn't affect where we transition from. So these should be equal rather than plus. This sets the X2 and the Y2 to the map X and Y of the player when we use the home warp, and the player map ID2, and the transition map, if it passes this selection, should be our home map there. And then this transfers to the player to the X2 and Y2 that they were at. So I think what happened, because it looks like everything's set up correctly, I think what happened is the common event just simply doesn't update because common events are in the database, and I'm pretty sure the database doesn't update unless there's a reload of the game. Only events and on map stuff tend to update. So let's first of all make absolutely certain that our home warp situation isn't broken. We get our raft. I'm going to do the exact same thing. We're going to try to place our raft. It says we cannot. Go back here, and there we go. We're in the right spot now. Now if I go over here and try to use my raft, it still says we cannot place it there. Now if I go up to the water, if I'm correct, I did set this to be correct. There we go. We've got our raft here. And we can get on it and off of it there. And if we go somewhere else where we need to set up the raft, we can do so. So that is pretty beautiful. Now we have a portable raft item. And that's going to conclude today's tutorial. I'm sorry for bringing them out a little bit later than I had intended. But now we've got the portable raft in there, and I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and can make use of it. Thank you for watching and have a great day.